Throw out what you think you know about economics. This week, self-described renegade economist Kate Raworth of Oxford University explains how to think like a reality-based economist. And two eco-feminists, one from South Africa, the other Mauritius, share a chat under a tree about Marx, feminism, and life on the planet. It's all coming up on the Laura Flanders Show, the place where the people who say it can't be done take a back seat to the people who are doing it. Welcome. Throw out the growth curve. Embrace the donut. What the world needs now is planetary, not flat plane economics. That is the message of a new book by self-described renegade economist Kate Raworth. For too long, our mind's eye map of our economy has been all wrong, she says. Simplistic on its face, wrong-headed in what it tries to depict, and altogether not helpful to a reality-based world with limited human and planetary resources. Lucky for us, Kate's got a fix. 7 ways to think like a 21st century economist. And as befits her concern with images and maps, she has sketched out a new picture. Not an ever-rising takeoff line or even a humpbacked Kuznets curve. It's concentric circles, hence the title of her book, Donut Economics. Raworth's an advisory member at Oxford University's Environmental Change Institute and teaches in its master's program for environmental change and management. She's in the United States on a book tour. The book's just out from Chelsea Green Press. Welcome to the program, Kate. Great to have you.
My pleasure.
So tell the story of how our map of the economy got so poorly diagrammed and what GIs had to do with it.
Well, poor old Simon Kuznets. Back in the 1930s, the American government asked him to come up with a measure of national income, which he did. And he said, when he first produced it, don't mistake this for the welfare of the nation. His caveat got put aside because once there was this single number of what the economy was worth, and you could compare it to other countries and look at it year on year, we got hooked on growth.
And you had that nice little upward
That's
going
right.
line.
So this curve, if the picture of what economic success looks like in our minds is this ever-rising line that just goes up, up, endless growth.
And what's the problem with that picture?
The problem with that picture is if you think about nature, 3.8 billion years of experimentation, nothing in nature, from your children's feet to the Amazon forest, nothing grows forever. Things in nature, they grow, healthy phase, but then they mature and come to thrive. And what I find extraordinary is that when I studied economics at university, and I'll bet anyone studying now, the question as to whether an economy comes to a maturity point and then thrives, it's not asked. What if the economy can't grow forever? What would it look like to create an economy that didn't try to grow forever but actually thrived? I think these are questions we need to start asking.
So what does it matter if we have a wrong image? And hasn't it been corrected and debunked and challenged?
So imagery, what I've learned is imagery is incredibly powerful. And if you open an economics textbook, it's full of words, it's full of way too many equations, and often there's a little picture on the side as if just a mere illustration. But any neuroscientist will tell you that over half of the nerve fibers in your brain are serving your visual cortex, and any image goes into the back of your brain and it sits there. It lingers like economic graffiti long after the words and the equations have faded. So we really should pay a lot of attention to the pictures that we use to draw what the economy is and what it's for and who we are and how it works.
All right, so you've come up with a picture. It's very different. It's those concentric circles. You call it a donut.
I call it a donut. So just like the kind of donut you guys eat here with a hole in the middle. So imagine that donut in the middle in the hole. That's a space where people are falling short on life's essentials, be it food, water, decent housing, healthcare, education, political voice. So we want everybody in the world to get out of that space of deprivation over what I've called a social foundation. So everybody can lead a life of dignity, opportunity, and community. But we mustn't go beyond the donut's outer crust, because out there we are overshooting our pressure on the planet, causing climate change, acidifying the oceans, massive biodiversity loss, depleting the ozone layer. And we know that these Earth system processes The Earth system scientists have said they are like planetary boundaries. They are keeping our planetary home, this extraordinary living planet, in the stable state that's so benevolent to us for the past 11,000 years. And we'd be crazy to kick ourselves out. So we have to get everybody out the hole in the middle without going over the outer edge.
All right, so what are our tools for doing that if we want to live in that sweet spot, jammy center, if you will?
So till now, for the last 100 years, let's say, it's been growth. Growth has been the way to get everybody out of deprivation. And economists, because of the pictures they've drawn, haven't even acknowledged the existing of the living world. Well, they haven't worried about it. They've called it an externality. Well, when you call something an externality, you've already told me how important you think it isn't. So economists have worried about getting everybody out of the center, ending poverty. Now we have to have new tools and new ways of thinking to do that at the same time as coming back in. We need to debunk that growth theory, that growth obsession. Actually, I think there are two ideas we need to pursue. We need to create economies that are distributive by design, in which value created is shared far more widely with everybody who helped create it. And we need to create economies that are regenerative by design, so they work with Earth's living cyclical processes rather than cutting against them.
For 200 years, industrial activity has been based on degenerative design. We take Earth's materials, make them into stuff we want, use it for a while, and then toss it away. Take, make, use, lose. It's a one-way system that runs counter to the living world, and it's devouring the sources of its own sustenance. Economic theory has told us not to worry, that more growth is needed so that nations can afford to clean things up. But at the global scale, that's simply not true. And the effects are destroying Earth's life support systems on which we all fundamentally depend. We can't wait for growth to clean things up because it won't. We need to turn today's economies, which are degenerative by default, into ones that are regenerative by design. Ones that run on renewable energy, that turn waste from one process into food for the next, so that things are never used up, but are used again and again. And in all this, the 21st century economist's role is a crucial one: to harness the potential of business and finance, of the commons and the state, and of human nature, to unleash this regenerative future.
Now, you make the point that this will require us to consider a whole lot of players that are not usually in what you describe as the neoliberal script. Name some of them.
So the neoliberal script, and I would say it's the script that's been put on the international stage ever since Thatcher and Reagan came to power, well, it's a story that stars the market, because the market, we're told, is efficient, so you should give it free rein. Finance, well, that we're told, infallible. Trust in its ways. Trade is win-win, open your borders. And so we just get out of the way. Players that are ushered off stage, not needed to be seen. The household, that's domestic, right? Just leave it to the women. The commons, well, everybody's heard the commons are tragic, so we can just sell them off, privatize those. Earth is inexhaustible, so you can take all you want. So all these essentials of life and the world have actually been marginalized from mainstream economics. You can't even see them in the diagrams. They don't get featured. And when you leave something out of the picture, it gets exploited, crushed, and that comes back to bite you.
And the big character we've been encouraged to focus on is that rational man. You have a problem with him too?
I have a big problem with rational man. So if you read the textbooks, he's never actually drawn. His portrait isn't drawn, but if it was, he'd have to be a man. He'd be standing alone. He'd have money in his hand, ego in his heart, calculator in his head, and nature at his feet. And the trouble with him is not just how absurdly narrow he is. In fact, one of the fascinating things I learned researching this book is that on being told that he's like us, we actually become more like him. So research in this country, in the US, in Israel, has found that the more that economic students learn about rational economic man, the more they value self-interest, the less value they give to compassion, to altruism. It's as if I need to become like this model. So he began as a model of man. He's become a model for man. So it really matters how we tell ourselves who we are, because that shapes who we actually become.
And the data and the research is just skewed. You say, for one thing, we're studying the wrong sorts of groups. You call them weird societies. I'd love you to spell that out. And then the other is that when the research that you dig up, when you go and look at people outside of these weird societies, some of the assumptions we make about intention and motivation and how to change behavior are just totally wrong.
So a lot of the research that's been going on in recent years to say, well, how do people actually behave? It's been done by professors in the States, in Australia, in Israel, and they do what's convenient, right? They just turn to their students and they run tests with their students and they say, oh, this is what people are like. And then one researcher went off and did the same test with forest living communities in Indonesia or native people in all sorts of very different cultures. It came back with completely different results. And he said, the students who are at the doorstep of all these professors, they're weird. And what that means is we're Western, educated, industrial, rich, and democratic. So that's the acronym WEIRD. And actually, they're not like most people at all. In fact, the way that the weird ones behave is at one end of the spectrum. So you cannot just interview your students and say this is what people are like. You're getting a very, very skewed particular version of humanity. So he launched off a whole area of research and looking at the diversity of people. And sometimes when people live in very market-based economies, they behave in one way. When they're based in economies that are subsistence, that don't have markets, families share, their behavior can be quite different. It just shows the variety of human behavior. We adapt and respond to the conditions around us.
So what do you recommend that we do? One thing, can we actually grow and be green? Can you run a business in that kind of warm, just, safe part of the donut?
Yes, I think you can, because we need to transform our economies. Today, they are deeply divisive, giving rewards to the 1%, and degenerative, running down the living planet on which we depend. We need to transform them so that they are distributive, sharing value with everyone who helps create it, and regenerative. That's an amazing transformation that needs to happen. And in that process, there are very clearly some industries that really need to grow. Solar capacity, right? Renewable energy, that's a wonderful growth field. So if someone's working in a company in that area, of course there's going to be growth there. That's an opportunity. So we need to grow back into balance. The incomes of people living on very, very low incomes, their incomes need to grow back into balance. So there are opportunities for sure.
But we've certainly interviewed people on this program who have tried. They've had very well-intentioned businesses. I'm thinking, you mentioned Anita Roddick in your book. We've had Ben and Jerry, the folks from the ice cream company in Vermont, on this show. And both of them came into the same conflict with their shareholders, that their kind of mission of being regenerative or beneficial to their community wasn't so beneficial to the shareholders. And they, at the end of the day, kind of lost their companies to buyouts, or at least Ben and Jerry's did.
So this is the fascinating, I think it's going to be a psychological drama between what I would call 21st century companies and regenerative design and 20th century capitalism. Because the 21st century designer says, how many benefits can I layer into this company so that I can actually give some away? That's the Ben and Jerry's mentality, the Body Shop mentality. 20th century capital finance says, how much value can I extract from this? Now, when you try and start a 21st century company that's generating value and giving away to the community, the environment, and you're going to be financed by these financiers who are just trying to maximize and extract the value they can capture, that is what pulls them down. And that's why we need to transform finance. So we need new kinds of financing that actually say, I want to also get a fair return for my money, but I want to give some away as well. And that's why I back these companies. It just shows that the design possibilities are out there, whether it's designing a regenerative city or a regenerative company. They need to be backed up by finance that actually unleashes the power of what they know they can create.
You've used the word design a few times. Design does require someone or group of people to be designing and kind of implementing a design. So what's the role for governance in all of this? If you didn't like industrial capitalism, didn't like finance capitalism, didn't like state socialism, who helps to direct our design in this new direction?
I love that question. I do use the word design very intentionally because I think in the 20th century, economists were desperate to be like physicists. They thought this was this reputable science and make it like physics, and there's all these laws that the economy follows. Wrong choice. The career that economists should actually take, career shift from controlling the levers of some mechanical economy. Levers don't exist. Economy is not a machine. We should be like garden designers. And the economy is more like a garden, ever evolving and changing. And some people say that sounds very laissez-faire. Well, they've never done a hard day's work in the garden because it's digging and weeding and pruning, and you shape and design your garden. So who are the designers? I think we're all designers. Anybody who's designing a new suburb of a city is a designer of the 21st century economy. And they're bringing in these regenerative principles and distributive principles. What we need from government is to create and enable people to create the legal business models that allow them to put purpose at the heart of their company, that allow them and make it easy to be employee-owned and to have finance that supports this regenerative design. We need governments to ban single-use plastics, ban putting useful materials in landfill, and give a long, legal and loud message about that so everybody knows that's going to be phased out within 5 years, guys. So start changing a business right now. So put those frameworks in place so that we get a regenerative economy happening.
You say more maypole dancing.
So maypole dancing. So I think economists are treated very serious. These are the real specialists. I think of that as sort of Lord of the Dance, the kingpin dancer at the front and all the other subjects and all the other ways of thinking behind, like a chorus line. What we actually need is maypole dancing, where you've each got your ribbon and you're weaving in and out. So John Maynard Keynes, John Stuart Mill, the great philosophers of the past, they understood this. They said a truly great economist is also a historian and a mathematician, understands sociology, understands political science. An economic angle on life is just one part of the whole. We have to be rounded and work together and really embed economics back in the social world from which it came.
Economics means household management. And the question of how a household should manage its resources is more relevant today than ever. In ancient Greece, when the philosopher Xenophon first coined the term economics, he was literally thinking about the affairs of a single household. But towards the end of his life, he applied the question more widely to the management of his hometown, the city-state of Athens. 2,000 years later, in Scotland, Adam Smith looked to the next level up, the management of the nation as a household, asking what makes the economy of one country thrive while another stagnates. And this question has held sway for the past 200 years. So economic thinking has gone from the household to the city-state to the nation-state. It's time to take the inevitable next step. Ours is the era of the planetary household. And this century, we need some pretty insightful managers to guide our planetary household, ones who are ready to pay attention to the needs of all its inhabitants. Let's get to work.
I love it. All right, Kate Raworth's book is Donut Economics. It's my new favorite economics textbook. 7 Ways to Think Like a 21st Century Economist. It's just out from Chelsea Green. Really great talking with you.
Lovely to be here. Thank you.
Eco-feminism. What is it exactly? And what does it mean to think in feminist ways about energy extraction and exploitation? This spring, I was invited to participate in a meeting convened by the Transnational Institute and the Alternative Information and Development Center based in Cape Town. There I had a chance to sit down with 2 women with interestingly contrasting views on ecofeminism, Donna Andrews from South Africa and Kashmira Bani from Mauritius.
For a very long time, I can speak about myself too, the focus was on, well, a north-south discussion about development. It was very much about, well, I could have told you 15 years ago my argument would have been, how do we industrialize, how do we ensure work, how do we ensure not necessarily economic growth in a neoliberal sense at all, but rather how do we facilitate, ensure that things are public and not private. In a country like South Africa, we're talking about racial dispossession, so the demand for public goods are essential. I think over the last period, it's not that the conversation has shifted per se, rather I think the ecological crisis has imposed itself on us. And I think it would be unfair to think that it's the environmental movement per se, because that's about the climate. But the ecofeminist movement have been talking about body and land and fish and sea and oceans for a very long time. And perhaps it's that has re-articulated itself in new forms.
Social reproduction is about regeneration of life. You know, people, women, doesn't have access to seed. doesn't have access to land, and when you cannot grow vegetable, when you cannot grow the basic needs, things for animals, for human beings to be alive, then you're destroying life. There is a need for that reproduction of agriculture, reproduction of life. It's not about conceiving children, etc. No, it's about capitalism has. In French we call that acapor, grabbing of land, grabbing of land, grabbing of seed. They control what we eat. Monsanto control the world food. For me, this is regenerating life.
So I think
taking control of life. Sorry.
No apologies. I think there's another dimension to it. So I think that. Which is great. You're reclaiming a notion of social reproduction in a regenerative way, and I think that that's important. So there's almost like you've gone the step towards the alternative. So when I think of social reproduction, it's not that, but social reproduction is as opposed to production, capitalist production, right? When I think about and speak about social reproduction, I'm talking about the invisible work that women are doing and people are doing all the time to subsidize the capitalist system.
There is not one alternative. There are many alternatives, and people are unique. We are different. We have different aspirations, and what's important is that we live together. We meet our aspiration in respect with nature. I mean, we admit that the earth has finite resources, okay, and we cannot practice an extractive system. People must be able to dream to implement a new social, economic, global order. It has to be, creative. It has to be dynamic. It has to respond to people's needs and in respect with nature, with regards to its limitation, etc., etc. And this process is permanent. It's permanent because the world is not. Our life is not static, it's dynamic, and there are new challenges coming, there are new contradictions coming. So being able to sit together, to work together in a participatory democratic way is a good start.
So I'm going to talk about for and against, and I guess that's my politics. Historically, I'm in transition, but I definitely think this false dichotomy between economy and politics, between mental and all these divisions that we have, the binaries that we have. I think that your question is about the new way, etc. It's to dismantle the master's house. Is I think going to be fundamental, and I think it's really. I don't think it's easy. I think for myself, I mean, I think it's really challenging. But I think that if anything, when you use the words of capitalism and patriarchy, the thing that is really, really important for me to bring home or reinforce is it's the subordination of everything below the economy. So the epicenter is the logic of efficiency. It's all the time. It's not only the discourse. We speak about our material world. So discourse sometimes it sounds like a story, but it's not just a story. It's really at the heart of it is why is it so central for us to put our exchanges in the world, our love, our care, our food, everything through a market which is based on the notion of the economy, which is in fact the epicenter of our crisis. So I think that part of the alternative has to be to I say shrink the economy, shrink its power, shrink its weight, shrink its dominance over our household, etc. If we're talking about economy in a different way, which is sharing, bartering, caring, etc., then I think that's sort of fundamental.
I think what you're doing here, we are complementing each other.